Donald Trump's pick of Kash Patel to potentially lead the FBI is bringing increased attention to Patel's extreme views and his so-called enemies list. In his 2023 book, Government Gangsters, Patel has an entire appendix listing what he calls members of the executive branch deep state. The list, which contains 60 names, including Democrats, Biden administration officials, and even some Trump appointees, among them former Attorney General Bill Barr, former Deputy AG Rod Rosenstein, Trump's former White House counsel Pat Cipollone, and Special Counsel Robert Hur. In the book, Patel also calls for firing the top ranks of the FBI, prosecuting leakers and journalists, and replacing the national security workforce with people who don't undermine the president's agenda. Yesterday on Capitol Hill, some senators were asked about Trump's selection of Kash Patel.
You know, I don't know him. I have read some of his comments and seen them, and I think that's the reason that this process starting earlier is much to our benefit. We're going to get a chance to sit down. I'll get a chance to talk to him. I have a big FBI presence in my state. We do all the background checks for all the guns, and it's an important part of the FBI's mission, and I want to see it protected.
If you have the power of that office, the FBI directorate, and you're using it to go after political enemies or the press or people you regard as adversaries, that's worse than incompetence. That's abuse of power that you have. And that power is awesome.
You know, we're talking right now about the potential replacement, though, for Christopher Wray, somebody Donald Trump appointed in 2017, somebody that has bipartisan support with many senators on the Republican side and the Democratic side. He's supposed to have a 10-year term that started in 2017, but there has been the signal from Donald Trump that he's going to fire Christopher Wray. And Willie, he's going to replace him. He wants to replace him. He wants to replace him with somebody that has an enemies list, somebody who was selling boots, cash boots a couple of years ago, but has an enemies list, and he's written it out, the people he wants to go after, a lot of Republicans, a lot of Democrats, a guy who has promised that he is going to go after reporters and journalists and arrest them for not following conspiracy theories about the 2020 election that have been disproven time and time again. Stand by. We're going to be talking about Dinesh D'Souza having to apologize in a second. And also saying he's going to shut down the FBI. He's going to clear it all out. This is, man, if it is not the most radical pick, it's one of the most radical picks. And again, if this is something that the Republican Party endorses in 2024, 2025, then it actually will be a Republican Party in the Senate that has reached a new low.
And back to your thought about Christopher Wray, the reason FBI directors get 10-year terms is because that is supposed to be insulated from politics. By definition, it spans at least 2 presidencies. So Donald Trump, as you said, appointed Christopher Wray in 2017. He's supposed to have a term that goes till 2027. He said he's going to fire him. And Kash Patel is a guy who is really the pure distillation of MAGA energy. He is a loyalist to the end of Donald Trump. His entire being, his entire public persona, his entire life has been run in the last decade or so in support of Donald Trump and attacking his perceived enemies, as you said, and perpetuating conspiracy theories. The job of FBI director is deadly serious because their work is deadly serious and something that should not be used as an appointment of a loyalist, a friend to attack perceived enemies. But that's what Donald Trump has chosen here. Open question whether the Senate goes along with this. David, you actually profiled Kash Patel a few years ago. For people who don't know him, in the piece, you detail how Patel rose from being an obscure Hill staffer to a key operative in Trump's battle with the intelligence community. So what more should people know about Kash Patel as we enter this process?
I think, Willie, the main thing is that he is the most loyal, extreme in his loyalty member of Trump's entourage that I've encountered. When he was sent to the Pentagon as chief of staff, under Chris Miller in a very brief period at the end of 2020, serving under Secretary Miller. He came with a very specific and focused agenda. This is what President Trump wants me to do. He was not there to run the Pentagon as chief of staff in the usual way. He was there to conduct specific political goals. There was a list of them that Trump wanted troops removed from various battlefields around the world. Patel tried his best, in most cases failed, to get those troops out of the way. He wanted to install a Trump loyalist in a key position at the National Security Agency, one of our most sensitive intelligence collection facilities. He talked with the CIA about reducing the Pentagon's support for CIA operations, whole string of things. He made clear to the people that he was working with at the Pentagon that he was not there to do the normal job of being a chief of staff, but to do the president's bidding. And I think what's of concern when you think about him as FBI director is the FBI director has extraordinary powers to conduct surveillance on American citizens. And those powers to listen into phone calls, to read mail, so to speak, would be directed by somebody who has shown that he has a very political agenda. And as you said, in his book, he had an enemies list.
Yes.